All right. Hi.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh,
Of
no,
course.
thanks for taking the time. We're excited to learn a lot more about Anglo-American and life in Prague and just have kind of like a conversation about it. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, we were hoping maybe you could start by talking a little bit about your experience. Um, because you came from the US, right? And moved to
Did,
Prague.
yeah. Yeah, to Prague randomly. So I got my undergraduate degree in North Carolina. At the time, I thought it was the greatest thing that had ever happened. I loved being in school. I got a job after I graduated in my field, and I really hated it. Just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I started looking for opportunities to move, and randomly I took about 15 BuzzFeed quizzes, the "Where should you live in the world" based on your personality quizzes, and all 15 said Prague. It was shocking. I'd never been here and I just packed up my life. I had two suitcases. I bought a plane ticket. I didn't think much about it. And I got certified to teach English. And it is, I think, one of the best things I've ever done. I will be honest and say it was very hard and scary at first, but Prague in general, all the people here want to do is hang out with their dogs in parks. They're very like outdoorsy people. They're obsessed with their dogs. I've seen a little old man feeding pizza to his dog under the table in a restaurant before. But it's a super walkable city. Everyone just kind of minds their own business. So there's a sense of like anonymous camaraderie that I'd never felt before. One time I tripped on my own heel and I fell down in the street, and you immediately get a little bit embarrassed, but I looked up and people were still just going about their day. A guy who was pretty close to me helped me up. It felt as if I can happily exist here without having to worry about people.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
that's crazy about the BuzzFeed quizzes.
Yeah.
They're pretty
Yeah, that's
accurate.
a favorite story. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but they really managed. It was, what's your ideal day off work? What's your favorite color? That kind of thing. And bam, Prague.
Wow.
Wow, that's so interesting. So you didn't know anybody before you moved?
No, not a soul. I didn't know anything about the Czech Republic in general. I knew it used to be called Czechoslovakia because that's what was written on my globe when I was a kid, and I knew that they used to be communist. And at the time, I thought that they were a part of Eastern Europe. But when I moved here, I learned no, no, they are Central Europe. They feel this strongly, so don't call them Eastern Europe. This is good advice that I can always give people.
Things that you wish you knew before you moved. So then how
Yeah.
did you find your way to Anglo-American?
Interestingly, through Americans, always, of course, I had a professor at my undergraduate school who went to New Orleans to keep teaching, and a colleague of his got a job at Anglo-American. And at the time, I was an English teacher and a tour guide. And so he gave her my phone number and said, "Hey, I know this girl, meet up with her." And I don't know, 6 or 7 months later, it was a while, but a posting came available and I applied for it because she told me. And it was, I don't know, it just kind of felt like fate. Immediately, I just got so integrated into the team. Our admissions people, Clea and Katka, and then our vice president, Yetta, they're also young girls. They're also not from the Czech Republic. And so it was just kind of this really immediate, really cool international melding pot where we would talk about food and skincare and argue about semantics. And it just felt immediately like home.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And then I guess what draws you to the university too, or what makes you feel like it could be a good option for students, either from Mexico, from the US, from countries, from Panama. Um, yeah, yeah, why would they, why would that maybe be a good fit, or what kind of students are you looking for too?
I think the thing that helps us stand out in my mind is the fact that you have to be a really specific type of person to want to go to a 100% international school in a place like the Czech Republic. There's a lot of really cool places that you can go to, but most of those have romance languages, so it's easier to get around immediately because if you speak a romance or a Germanic language, you can kind of integrate. But Prague is a Slavic language, and so immediately the culture is different and everything on the signs is different. It's an abrupt change. And so all the people who come here have to be ready for it, and they're all searching for the same things. So the moment that you walk into your classes, whether it's another American or if it's somebody from Kazakhstan or even a Czech themselves, to have come together at all in that classroom, you automatically have something in common. You all already need friends and you're happy to get them. But then something I think AAU does really well is our orientation day. I hate to say we force people to be friends because that's not what it is, but there's a scavenger hunt all around town that's timed and you can win prizes. There's like an old school tram ride. There's all kinds of activities. And since we're a small school, you meet over the 2 days, every single freshman. You immediately figure out who are your people, who's maybe someone that's a good friend for notes in class, but not a come to your house for a movie night friend. Like it just becomes clear. I think AAU brings people together in a really fantastic way that I haven't noticed in a lot of other places. And that's mostly because of our students.
And
Oh,
what
that's
kind of
awesome.
student is a really good fit? I mean, should they be taking BuzzFeed quizzes in order to see if Prague should even be on their radar in the first place? Like, I mean, for me, just out of experience, especially being based in Europe too, like I always see a draw or questions asked more about other countries and not necessarily the Czech Republic, even though I think Prague definitely stands out as soon as you start doing your research and you think, okay, really safe, really student-friendly city in general. And I think experiencing the personal experiences that you're giving too are definitely standing out. But I mean, what should they kind of be looking for, or what maybe should they know so that way they know that maybe they're not such a great fit and kind of moving forward, or even just where to start their research?
I think for a lot of students, they kind of fall back on the places that they've already heard about. Whereas I think for the people who are willing to come for the Czech Republic, I don't want to call them more adventurous or more into mystery because that would imply that the other students are less, and that's not at all what's going on. But I think for the people who really sort of pull the trigger, so to speak, to come to Prague are people who want to discover new things for themselves. So students who want to sort of go with the beaten path, that's an awesome option, and they come here for study abroad, and they often stay because they realize how great it is. Or the students who are a little bit more, I don't want to stay in my hometown, I want to really see the world. Those are the ones that we find coming to us. And especially any student, especially these days, who's on TikTok has seen one of our students. She's very, very big on TikTok. I recommend everyone look into her, Liza Jean. She's in France now, but she put a lot of videos out just about the beauty of Prague, the things that you wouldn't expect. Of course, we have Charles Bridge. Of course, we have Prague castles, but also Czechs are obsessed with nature. So there's a lot of parks all over the city, beautiful, beautiful parks. And the types of students that come to us are the adventurous, outdoorsy, want to forge their own path type of students. They're usually a little more independent, but also definitely looking for a tight-knit community. And I think research-wise, you should begin there. You should be looking for what's the city that people don't know about. You should be looking for, where's the best student place? Where's the best student card? Where's the easiest place to travel from? That's another reason we get students. We're Central Europe. You can easily get anywhere very cheaply from here. So it's these people that we tend to get more often, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Totally.
totally.
And beyond orientation, I mean, what sort of support can they expect to receive, or maybe not expect to receive? Like, what kind of would be a day like, even in just how they're moving around from their apartment or their residence and going to school? What would they do on a Wednesday night? What would they do on a Saturday? How academic is it?
Something that really surprises me about Prague in general is that no matter what you're interested in doing, you can do it here. Even as simple as Prague is a landlocked country, and almost every weekend in the summer, I go surfing on a river 30 minutes away because that's a thing you can do here. So yeah, really no matter what their interests are, they'll find something. But I mean, I know a lot of our students on Wednesdays, and you mentioned, really like to go to this bouldering bar that's near our dorm. So you can go and have a beer and go bouldering inside no matter what the weather is. There's a bowling alley near another dorm that gives a free shot every time you get a strike, which probably isn't something I should be advertising, but it's certainly quite popular. But additionally, a lot of students will go hiking because weirdly that's a thing Czechs love, or they're also really into beach volleyball, but there are no beaches. So we have beach volleyball courts floating in the river that goes through town. It's also important to note, I always hesitate to say this, but it is a part of the culture. Czechs consume more beer per capita than anywhere else on earth, like even more than Germany and Austria. And it's never power drinking. It's like Czechs want to sit outside on a nice day and enjoy a beer. That's a part of their culture. And so that's a thing that our students like to get into. You go to a beer garden, you have your sausage, you drink your beer, you walk your dog. It's a very dog friendly city. It's just sort of a lovely outdoorsy place. In terms of getting around all the time, you know, the public transportation is sustainable, which is cool. It's incredibly cheap and it's really safe and reliable. The dorm to our campus is about 20 minutes, just like one straight shot on the dorm. You don't have to get on or off. It's just bam, there you go. And pretty much everything in the city is that way. It's a really small city. You can get from one end to the other in an hour. So it's navigable and it's easy to find anything to do that you could possibly want.
And obviously you're extroverted too, so I'm sure in finding your footing, although there had to be culture shock along the way, but like how are you seeing students kind of integrate? I mean, of course they have this orientation phase too, but and just realizing, you know, like I love this idea of nature. Maybe with COVID I haven't been so connected to nature overall, or I love this idea that I can go to different bars, but maybe I just haven't been in those social scenes in a while, you know, depending on what their lockdown measures are, of just like finding out what they like, or, you know, what have you heard from students who have recently moved there of different things that maybe surprise them, or things that they really like, things that they should know?
One thing which is interesting that I hear a lot from the students, and this is sort of academics related, but then getting into it, is they're not fully prepared for the amount of free time they have when they come to us. Each of our classes only happens once per week. So you can usually have all 5 classes, you know, Monday and Tuesday if you end up scheduling your time right. And then you have the rest of the week free. So they always are just, you know, going for walks and seeing some cute little bar that has a funny name. Like there's a popular place called Amaze in Chayovna. So it sounds like amazing Chayovna. And Chayovna is both a pun, but it's also a tea store. So it's just, there's always cute little places like that you'll just wander into without noticing, and suddenly it's there. And one of the beautiful things about Prague is that it's highly walkable. So even if you are introverted and maybe you're not sure what you're looking for, you don't ever have to feel unsafe just walking for an hour and seeing what you see. That's what I did when I first moved here. And I found a lot of interesting places, odd places. I mean, like you name it, it's there. But that's one of the things our students like to do. Otherwise, our mentors, which is our other, like our second and third year students, are super, super active with our freshmen. They're always trying to bring them around to do cool stuff. So literally the first day of orientation, the mentors will take the kids out to a beer garden, tell them every place to go, tell them all the cool stuff that's going on. They're always coming to bring them to various, you know, movie theaters or to different plays. There's a black light theater, which has a really cool puppet show, which sounds lame, but is not. Like, it'll surprise you. Yeah, there's just lots of odd things. But then also, for any introverted person who's really interested in music or in art or in culture, we are the city. That's it, period. Don Giovanni was initially like presented here in Prague. It's a Mozart original and it was here, and the theater still exists and you can still watch Don Giovanni in it. So it's really, no matter what you're interested in, there's something for you.
Oh, that's really cool. I guess going back to Kristen's question about support in the university too, like you mentioned the mentors. I'm curious to what other academic resources, how kind of rigorous the classes are, just kind of more about the academics of the school and what do most students major in. Yeah.
So our largest program is also, in my opinion, our strongest program is international relations. I think that it's our strongest mostly because, you know, the Czech Republic has tried out pretty much every political system you could possibly imagine. So what better place to learn about various political systems and international relations than a country that's tried them all? But beyond that, I think one of the greatest support systems we have is our open door policy. You know, we're a small school, so the dean already knows every single student. You have to meet with your dean prior to the start of every semester in order to even register for classes at all. But so it means that if something happens, let's say you have dyslexia and you need a few more minutes on an exam or something, like the dean's door is always open to you to just pop in, and they already know who you are. And it means that you have this really supportive, established relationship with somebody who's genuinely invested in you and in your success. And then if for some reason you don't feel like you're getting what you need from your dean, the dean of students is likewise always there, open door policy. And this continues all the way up to the president. You know, they probably won't ever have to talk to the president as students, but if they do want to, open door policy, go do what you need to do. And since we're a small school, in general, you just constantly are seeing people that you know all over the city, not just all over the school. It kind of surprises me how often I'll be wandering into a grocery store and look up and there's a student, or I'll be out for a walk with my boyfriend and there's 3 students in the park. Like they're just everywhere. And that's sort of Prague in general. It's a really small city.
Oh, that's really cool about the dean, like just being able to walk in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so comforting. I actually like that idea of just having extra time on a test in general, or kind of meeting you with where you're at. I mean, I was also curious too, is it more test-based or participation-based or research-based or presenting a presentation or a paper, or like what should they expect as far as how they are, I guess, portraying they've learned the material in their classes?
It's sort of an all of the above and none of the above situation. Our faculty is every bit as international as our student body. So we are on an American system, so we do have to have more than just one grade. This isn't a European university where who cares if you go to class and then at the end you have your final and hope you pass. You do have to come to class. There is a participation grade. That's our university policy. But then on top of that, you might have a paper and a final, or a midterm and then a paper, or you might have a whole bunch of group projects. It really depends on the nature of the course. The bulk of them will involve at least one group project. We're very big on those. In 2021, you're probably not going to work by yourself. You'll definitely have a team, even if it's remote, and you have to know how to work with people. So we're really big on making sure that that's a thing. But then in general, it's a lot of, I would say it's a lot of what you're already used to in the American system. And our American students actually find that we're a lot easier than they expect us to be, because I think that a lot of American schools sort of prep them to be like, college, you'll never be able to have friends and sleep and work and do your homework. And like, that's not a thing here. You don't have to pick two of the three, there's absolutely a work-life balance. That was my favorite thing about it. In general, I find with European schools, but especially in the Czech Republic, we're not trying to kill you to get your degree. We want you to enjoy your life. This is the time for you. You don't have a real job. You don't have real responsibilities. Why should you kill yourself and not sleep? You should be able, if you want, to stay up till 4 a.m. doing stupid things. Not every night, but every now and then. And you have the ability to do that with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love all these personal anecdotes and just listening to the experiences in general. I think it's just such a great window into a university that normally you're not able to see. I mean, you can read student blogs and look at it, but you still don't get a feel of how are you actually spending your time, just being kind of frank and putting it forward like this. I'm so appreciative. So I know that it's 15 students average per class, but how big is the school? Can you remind me?
So our official answer to that is between 800 and 1,000, but it's usually more like 500 to 600 are degree-seeking students. And then we usually have 100 to 200 study abroad students. Oddly, a lot of those study abroad students come from California. I'm not really sure why. We get a lot from California and a lot from Ohio, but otherwise our degree-seeking students, usually like 500 to 600 students. I can say our top 3 demographics are the United States, the Czech Republic, and post-Soviet nations, but the post-Soviet umbrella is so large. We definitely have more Kazakh and Kyrgyzstani students than we do Russian students or, let's say, Moldovan students.
Wow. Thinking about, students being from all over and having different languages, and what is the kind of language landscape on campus? Like, are people speaking English in their free time, or is it just in classes? Like, how do you navigate? And then how much English do you encounter also in Prague, like as a city? Yeah.
Every now and then on campus, you will hear a different language, but it's not common. And often when you do hear a different language, it's because it's students studying for one of their language courses. One of the cool things about AAU is, well, of course, most Americans can only speak English or Spanish or French, but one of those 3. And so the rest of the students that are with us because they want to learn in English specifically. And so it just sort of fosters a sense of continuing to speak in English always. And then every now and then you'll hear something else, but that's sometimes almost more fun because then you have the, what language is that? Can I understand what they're saying type of thing going on in the cafe. For Prague, this is always kind of embarrassing to admit, but you really don't need English in Prague. I've lived here for almost 6 years and the amount of Czech that I speak is so low. It's embarrassingly low. My boyfriend does most of our things for me because I just can't communicate very well. You don't need Czech. You should learn it, but most people under the age of 40 in Prague speak really excellent English. It was a push post-communism. The Czechs brought down communism peacefully and they really wanted to sort of progress with the rest of the world as quickly as humanly possible. For that reason, almost everyone in Prague speaks English. IT is the fastest growing industry. Prior to COVID, we had the fastest growing GDP in all of Europe. And on top of that, we have the lowest unemployment rate in Europe, even throughout the duration of COVID. And all of this really speaks to the Czech desire to constantly be westernizing and modernizing, and English really plays heavily into that.
So interesting. I mean, do students learn Czech during their first semester? Do they have the option either at a language school or? on campus?
They can. We offer Czech courses. We always do tell them to temper their expectations, though. Czech is, I mean, it's like a level 5 language. They decline their nouns. It's insane. Like, it's absolutely crazy. We do offer Czech courses, of course, but one of the things that we find is actually more helpful for our students is they like to do language exchanges. So let's say, you speak Spanish and you want to learn Czech, then a Czech student who wants to learn Spanish can just trade lessons with you. And we see that happening a lot in the cafe. So that's one of the cooler aspects of the language learning, I would say.
That is so cool.
I
And
love
I don't know,
that.
I just feel like considering you made the switch from North Carolina to going to Prague, is a lot of the history and just kind of these intricacies of what you've learned, is that come about in living there, or did you prepare yourself in any sort of way after you packed your 2 suitcases, and just learning more about the culture and the life?
I did not prepare myself to move here in any capacity, to my own detriment, I will say. It was a lot harder than it needed to be, just because I was like, tra-la-la, let's see what happens. But I mean, 6 years later, I'm still here. So obviously it's a place that you can sort of integrate pretty quickly. History-wise, I was just fascinated, no shade to America, it's my country and I love it, but like there are buildings in this country that are older than our entire country. So I just was like, what is going on? I have to know these things. And then you learn crazy things like all the defenestrations. Prague has a history of throwing people out of windows for religious reasons, which is just crazy to me. Everyone, of course, is aware of Martin Luther, but 100 years before Martin Luther lived, the Czechs had their own version of him, Jan Hus. Like, it's the history here is just insane, and it's varied, and it goes back forever. And it's definitely something that I found myself diving into, and I find most people do the same, because really, how can you not when you're surrounded by it?
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. And did you have any culture shock moments? Like, or
Yes.
things that were really hard to adapt to? Yeah, what
Yeah,
was the difficult side? Yeah.
the biggest one for me is just Czechs themselves. As bad as that sounds, like I love them now, but they did live through communism and it was a lot. And they lived through World War II. Like they had quite a few things happen in a row here. And so whereas Americans will always greet you first with a smile, a Czech isn't probably going to smile at you until like the 3rd time you guys have interacted. So it was the smallest things like that that really threw me off at first. But then I realized once a Czech has decided you're their friend, you are their friend forever. Like life, ride or die, they will do anything for you. And they're just such warm, lovely, welcoming, really dark humor, hilarious people. But it threw me off so badly at first because they weren't smiling at me. And I took that personally as opposed to just recognizing that it was different.
And
Oh,
for
yeah.
students, when like this happens, like this sort of scenario, and they're like, what on earth is going on? I mean, who do they turn to at school for help when they're still trying to find their footing, especially in the first few months?
That's a good question. And I don't know that I have one answer because as silly as it sounds, it's just everyone. We do find in the admissions office that a lot of students constantly just come back to us. Like there's one girl who keeps emailing me about, where do I buy a notebook or where do I do this? And I think for a lot of them, it's just easier to sort of stick with us because in the admissions office, we're all not from here. So we all know exactly what it feels like. And so it's just kind of an awesome resource for students. But then also the 2 guys who run the school cafe, it's these Irish guys, Bill and Kieran, and they're just hilarious and they employ the students. So a lot of the times when the students are in the cafe expressing various issues, one of them will jump in and help them out. They're just so friendly and they love being around the students and helping. So I'd say, interestingly enough, Bill and Kieran are huge resources to the students in general.
No, I love this. I
Amazing.
mean, I always like to set expectations of what is available because even if you're going to a US university, I mean, you also have to be proactive of what services you're seeking out, even if there are designated offices for it. But I feel like since a lot of it does fall back on culture shock, that's why I kind of like to know how are they trying to find their footing. Because it sounds like you have a really robust, welcome week, and then you do have the mentors who are also helping them out and orienting them of what's off campus and what they can potentially be doing. And obviously it's up to the student. But I just find that in moments like that, I would like to know who to turn to. Somebody's still not smiling at me and I've been trying really hard. So
What do I do? Yeah. It's also funny though, because the shocking thing about Prague that you don't realize until you get here is how many Americans are already here. There's a whole neighborhood called Žižkov, it's Prague 3, where you will hear English on the street before you will hear Czech, just because there's so many non-Czechs living there. Most of them are American or British, which is really lovely because it means that if you live there, it's like it's almost like you're in America with some British people wandering around and some pretty architecture. It's yeah. So there's neighborhoods for everyone. There's even, you know, American restaurants, wing houses and things that are owned by Americans, and they have American waitresses. So if you're ever feeling homesick, there's different places you can be right back with your people.
Wow. You know, it kind of leaves me wondering too, like you had mentioned, you know, public transportation is really cheap, like being around in the city. For students who are, you know, on a very limited budget and thinking about studying in a different country, is that doable for them? Kind of, yeah, what are the costs? Are there scholarships? What are living costs like in Prague?
I This is such an interesting question to me because I always wonder how much I should divulge about my own finances, but then I think people should be fully aware. So our tuition can be expensive. It's cheaper than America, of course, but we don't offer scholarships to incoming freshmen. Instead, we have a merit-based scholarship. So every student will have to enroll in 5 classes and they have to pay $4,000. But as long as they can come up with the $4,000, the rest of it is pretty manageable because they can get 5 classes. If they get straight A's, the next semester's free. It sounds really scary. It's not. I've done it. I can personally vouch that they can do it too. And then beyond that, it's an incredibly affordable place to live. When I first moved here, I lived in a really nice apartment that was designed by a student of Le Corbusier, who's a super famous architect. I had 2 roommates, 2 American girls. They were lovely. And I made less than American minimum wage here by like half. And I still had a fine life, lived in a beautiful apartment. I couldn't travel very much and I wasn't saving money, but I wasn't lacking. And as I continued to live and work and, you know, work full time and that sort of thing, it got better and better. The beauty for our students is there's lots of cheap food options available. They're able to work part-time on the student visa if they want to, especially if they're English speakers. They can teach English or work as nannies. There's a huge market for that and make a lot of money very quickly. And in general, you know, if you want to go out for a steak dinner, it's like $7 to $8. Most restaurants have a lunch menu, so you can spend, you know, $4 and get soup and a drink and an entree pretty easily, and maybe even dessert depending on where you go. Electronics are expensive. I always tell students, get your own electronics at home. Do not buy them in the Czech Republic. They're just far more expensive here. I'm not sure why, but everything else is way cheaper. We find, usually speaking, you can expect to live comfortably, rent utilities, all of your entertainment, all of your meals, all of your transportation for like $800 to $1,000 a month. I will say, and I always want students to know this, I like the full disclosure of it. Our student housing is more expensive than the average. It just is what it is. You know, it has reception, it has security, it's fully stocked, it has all the dishes, everything you could ever need. And it's a great deal, but it is more expensive. So I usually tell students, live in it for 6 months so that you can get your visa. And then once you're here in Prague, you can even take that amount down by like half if you find a good apartment with some friends. My first place that I lived in, my rent per month was about $270.
Wow. No, very
Yeah, that's
doable.
awesome.
Well, I think it's also kind of the concept too, and I'm sure this happens with you too, Alina, of just trying to have a student understand what are living expenses in general, you know, normally because they are supported by their parents and they aren't aware of, wow, this really is how much 3 meals a day plus drinks plus going out plus transportation really costs. So I definitely think it's doable in that sense. I mean, depends where you're coming from, obviously, but thanks for laying that out. And with housing
Yeah.
too, you mentioned plates, so they have kitchens, but they don't have a cafeteria, right?
No, so as far as I know, the dorms are thinking about getting a cafeteria because there has been some demand for it, but right now they just have fully stocked kitchens on every floor for everyone. And then at AAU, we have our cafe. It's not meal plan based. That's not so much a thing here. Some of them are that way, but most universities in the Czech Republic don't have meal plans. They all just have student priced cafes. So, you know, for us, every day for 100 crowns, which is like roughly $5, there's a fresh hot meal. Sometimes it's vegan, sometimes it's vegetarian, sometimes it's all loaded up with meat and cheese. It just kind of depends on what Bill and Kieran feel like making. But there's always a soup that's like roughly $2. There's always wraps that are, again, like roughly $2 each. It's all very, very inexpensive. Like it's what you think things should cost when you're a child. That's what they actually cost here.
No, I love that analogy. That's awesome.
Wow.
I'm sure you have
That is
questions too, Alina, but I totally don't want to forget. As far as kind of like postgraduate placement, where they're going afterwards, I mean, obviously it depends where they're from, but what sort of expectations should they have if they're going to grad school, if they want to keep on working in Europe because they really like it, thinking of going home, alumni support, all that good stuff.
So our alumni are actually some incredibly prolific people. We have over 2,000 in our active alumni network. And by active, I mean every single year after graduation, the alumni come back to Prague and they throw a big party for all the new graduates, like the day of graduation. So you graduate and you're immediately just sort of doctored into this, or grandfathered in, sorry, to this really fantastic group of people. The first Czech woman who ever climbed Mount Everest is one of our graduates. Our graduates work for Nike, they work for Google, they work for Bloomberg, they work for the United Nations, they work for NATO, they get master's degrees at Columbia, at Oxford, at King's College. Pretty much every major university in each state we have graduates at. It's kind of insane, to be honest with you. Their reach is so broad, and it's such an incredible, very active resource.
That's so amazing that they come in person to celebrate.
Yeah.
That really says a lot.
It's really rare.
It's really fun too. I love going. They always have these like weird little plastic drink tokens. And at the first time you walk in, they'll give you 2 and you sort of have your, we'll call it polite mingling. And then of course, some of the graduates who come every year, you see them find their old friends and it's like a big reunion. And then slowly over the night, you'll notice that suddenly everyone has a lot more than 2 drink tokens and everyone's best friend. And then the next day there's like so many job announcements and just various new connections that somehow came together as this happened, but it's fantastic to watch.
That is
Oh my gosh.
awesome. And are you finding the job opportunities to be more so local, or really they're all over the place since they're employed or they're creators all over the place?
Well, they are all over the place, but one of the beautiful things about the Czech Republic in general is that we do have the lowest unemployment rate in the EU, even now as of August 2021. So even throughout the duration of COVID, the unemployment rate here is so low. And so there are jobs everywhere. People are desperate. You do not need to speak Czech to get them. And the beauty of the dual accredited degree is if you graduate, you are legally eligible to enter the Czech work market. You still need somebody to sponsor a residency visa, but if you're already able to work legally, so there's no tax issues, companies are super inclined to do that for you. So if people want to stick around, like, absolutely, you legally can, and you should, because there's a lot of opportunities. But otherwise, I mean, there's opportunities everywhere just because our alumni are from everywhere and they live everywhere. And so really, no matter what country you want to go to and no matter what industry you want to work in, there's someone to talk to.
So amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. You know, I'm kind of wondering, going back to the idea of having a job while you're studying, is that something a lot of students do? Like, would you say it's a majority, a minority on campus? How many students work and study? Yeah.
Interestingly, I would say it's about 50-50, just because, as I've already mentioned, there's a lot of free time with the way that you can schedule your classes with us. So students want to find something to do. And as silly as this sounds, you can only go out into the beautiful nature so often before you're like, okay, I need something a little bit more stimulating. Yeah. So most of our students work in some capacity. You know, some of them will maybe do translation services or they'll babysit twice a week. Some of them have full-time jobs for big companies like Siemens. That's a direct example. Actually, one of our master's students works for Siemens, and I don't know, he keeps getting people jobs. It's like kind of insane. But so it's really a huge number. But additionally, our MBA program specifically assumes that you're going to be working while you're taking that program. So it's a weekend program. So we have a lot of students who come in already working, you know, intending to continue doing so. And even for myself, like I was an employee before I was a student, and I continued working full time, and I was in school full time, and it was perfectly doable.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so cool. You know, it kind of, well, it leads me with the question too of like, when students are kind of doing everything on campus and things, how many students also spend time, or I guess, are there clubs and like kind of extracurricular activities that are run at the university, or do students just find their things in the city? Yeah.
Both. Interestingly, Prague has like an odd, I don't want to call it an obsession. I guess I'll say affinity. Prague has an interesting affinity towards dancing. Lots of students take dance classes, both on campus and off. And even, you know, old Czech people, like for Christmas, they'll buy each other ballroom dance classes. And you'll see suddenly on a Tuesday night, like 50 older people in lovely dresses streaming into one random room. You kind of never know what you're going to see. But then on campus, because European universities typically don't have like sports teams or that kind of thing, we have our student government administer all of the clubs. Essentially how it works is we have a list of clubs, they'll roll over semester by semester. And then if, let's say, writing club for some reason was losing interest, we would just dissolve it for that semester. And then we would create a new club in its place that reflected the interests of the current students. Sometimes these are revolving, like every spring we get a basketball club and then every fall it goes away because no one cares about basketball during the fall apparently. But it's kind of one of these, like, whatever you're interested in, as long as you can find 2 other students who are also interested, you can pitch it to student government and we can probably make it work.
And then these clubs get like funding from the university to do stuff,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
once you pitch it. Okay.
Yeah, we have a club fair every year. So actually it's twice a year. It's every fall and every spring right at the beginning. We have a club fair and anyone who has an idea for a club can just sit and pitch it. Or if multiple people are like, oh, we hate this, let's get rid of it. Like that's a thing that can happen. But it's kind of a constantly ongoing discussion. And our student government is one of the most active I've ever seen. You know, they have a monthly meeting with the president himself. The minutes get released, I always go through them. They're so active. It's crazy. They just organized an entire spirit week for our students, even though we don't have sports teams, just because they wanted to give them something fun to do during COVID. So that's happening right now, actually. The first day of it, Monday, there was a fire dancer in the courtyard of our university doing flips, like super acrobatic. It was crazy. And our marketing girl met him in the place that I was talking about, Amaze in Chayovna. So it sort of all comes full circle.
Wow, I need visuals for all this. I need all the photos. I don't know. I guess I haven't been following you on social media like I should be. I need all the stories. This just sounds like it's great story time here. Quite the
Honestly,
party, quite the event.
Sometimes I feel like I sound like I'm lying about it, but like, no, things just happen so randomly all the time. And the longer you live here, the more used to it you get. Our marketing girl is one of my best friends, and she came over Monday night and sat down and was like, I had a prog night. And I knew exactly what she meant by it. It's just a night when you go to do one thing and suddenly 6 other things have happened, but they're all fun and interesting. And you just keep following the flow until suddenly the sun is rising. Like it just happens all the time.
Wow. I love all these stories. This is so great.
I want to move to Prague now.
Yeah.
I really recommend it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then as far as, I mean, like application requirements, obviously that's all on the website, but like for somebody who's thinking, okay, maybe they listen to this, or maybe they've been looking at you on social media or on your website too, and they're like, how do I get ready, or what should I think of when I'm putting forward in my application, or how do I reach out to you? What do you kind of recommend in that sense?
In general, with the application, your personal statement and your CV are the 2 most important parts. We do care about grades and that we need to see that you did well in high school, but you know, COVID was really difficult. A lot of people suffered in an online learning platform, and it's not fair to penalize students for that. Like that's not normal, and this shift happened very quickly. So our minimum required GPA is a 2.5, and instead everything rides on the interview you have with the dean. The best way to prepare for that is the personal statement and the CV. If you don't have work experience and volunteer experience, that's fine. We don't care. We literally just want to know who you are as a person. For my own CV, when I was applying, I put that I really like to read. And in my entrance interview, I had a lovely conversation with my dean about the book I had read most recently. It was a big part of our interview. Our deans are just looking for students who are motivated, who are excited, who are willing to work for the degree that they're, you know, trying to be a part of, but also students who want to be a part of our alumni, who want to really make something of themselves. One thing that we are absolutely not is a diploma mill. We are not here to take your money, give you a degree, and forget about you. That's not our method. That's not who we are. And those aren't the kind of students we want. We want people who want to come here to make friends with everybody else, who want to work hard, who want to engage, who want to watch a fire dancer at Spirit Week. So these are the things we want to see in the application. It's the personal statement and the CV. These are the 2 most important.
How long has the dean been with the school?
So it depends on which dean. There's a dean for each school. So the dean of journalism, media, and visual arts, he is from California. And I believe he's been with us for 15 years, but it could be more at this point. I'm pretty sure it was 15 when I started. So at this point it might be 18. So who knows?
Wow.
Our dean of students used to be the assistant dean of humanities, and she's been with us for about 12 years now. I think all of them except for international relations have been with us for more than 10 years. International relations recently changed. The dean is a lecturer, however, and he's been with us a long time as a lecturer, just not in the dean capacity. And the assistant dean is this incredible woman named Zuzana, who I think in 10 years, either we will all be dead by her hand or she will be the president of the Czech Republic. Like she's so capable and incredible. So all of them have been around for a long, long time. Even our
Wow.
lecturers. We had an interview recently with one of our lecturers for a new social media series, and we were like, "Oh, how long have you been teaching here?" And he said 20 years. And we were like, "That's incredible. We're only a 30-year-old university, so there's a lot of retention."
Wow.
Wow.
No, I
Oh,
asked
that's
too,
awesome.
because if you just think of the quantity of interviews that they're doing every year,
Yeah.
and just, listening to these messages from students. I mean, if a student wanted to reach out beforehand, not to have a talk with the dean, but just to see, okay, let me see if what I have in my application is enough, or what I should be stressing out about or not, because I feel like there is this pressure with COVID right now too, of what classes are you choosing? Did you adapt to online learning? I think it's really great that you pointed that out. That is why you are flexible with the GPA and, the other application components. That's why it does come down to the message and to the interview that you're giving in general.
Yeah.
But no, I
And
find
that's
that's really impressive.
Yeah, we do that across the board at AAU. It's definitely a place where we recognize that people are people. People have problems. People experience deaths in the family throughout COVID, or in the middle of the year, it could be something stupid. Maybe you get a tooth infection and you miss a week of classes, and now you need a little bit of help to catch up. Like we're not here to penalize people for not being perfect. We don't want perfect people. We just want people who want to be there and want to learn. And that sort of is pretty much our entire approach, start to finish, throughout the full 3 years.
Wow. Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
have one more kind of academic question about students choosing their classes. So, when do you choose your major? Is there a core curriculum, distribution requirements? How do you choose your classes? Can you look at like reviews on how a professor was? Like, yeah, what's the process?
So it's actually a lot more straightforward than it was for me when I was in America, and I feel slightly salty about it, even though, Rate My Professor helped me so much. But essentially how it works is you have to choose the individual program that you're interested in when you apply. So you can't just apply generally, you have to apply to humanities or to business, whichever thing you choose. If you do a semester in humanities and think, nope, wrong choice, wish I had done IR, you just write a letter to the dean. The dean then speaks to your dean, you sign off, you switch very easily. It's not a big deal. Within the individual programs, there's specific concentrations. So let's say you're really interested in international relations, but you don't really have any idea what that means or what you want to do in international relations, then you can just choose the extended major, general overview, the way we all understand it to work, and you're good to go. But if you've looked around the world recently and you think this isn't okay, I must do something, and you're passionate about human rights, then you can declare a human rights concentration and get a really specialized degree in exactly what you're interested in working in. And you're not locked into that choice to the end of your first year. So you can kind of shop around and figure out what you're doing. We don't have the same core credit system as American universities because we are a 3-year program rather than a 4-year program, but still fully US accredited. So it's actually a faster, cheaper degree in the long run. But it means, we're not going to force you to take 2 science credits if you're doing a humanities degree. You don't need chemistry to learn about, so we're not going to make you do PE credits or various things. All the courses that you have are specifically related to your major. And then there's some that you must go through and do. And then you have 6 open electives. And the best way that we have to allow students to choose those classes accurately is before they're allowed to register, they must meet with their dean. Their dean will talk to them about the classes they've already taken. The dean will give them suggestions about the best classes to take. If a student is really nervous about a particular professor, perhaps that class is going to be offered the next semester with a different professor. The dean knows all of this and advises them. No one can register without talking to the deans. I think that's one of the greatest ways that we sort of lead students through it all. You're never going to feel like, oh God, I don't know what's going on. Like, you're going to know, someone's going to have told you, will not have held your hand, but you'll know what you need to accomplish in order to graduate. The
Oh,
cool
that's
thing I think for
awesome.
us is actually just the open electives. You can take them from any program you want. So a lot of times we'll have, like journalism students who take all of their electives in international relations because they want to be, reporters for various different world events or that kind of thing. So you can really kind of just combine all of our programs with all of our other programs and get exactly what you want out of your education.
How many electives do you get like per year? How do the electives work?
There's 6 open electives total, and then there's closed electives as well. So the closed electives have to be within your specific school. For example, when I did my master's, I did general humanities just because I figured it sounded interesting. And one of the open lectures I was able to take was environmental anthropology, which was just a random course about environmental issues. And I ended up writing my thesis out of that course just because it was so interesting. But then on the other hand, some of the open electives are, interesting things. I took philosophical ethics just because I figured Socrates was someone I should probably probably know about. And that was one of the open things that I could have done. But then I also took a journalism course just because I really wanted to know more about Václav Havel. He's a playwright and a politician in the Czech Republic. Our airport is named after him. And there was a class called Václav Havel, Theater, Politics, and Dissent. It was a journalism course. So we got to read all of his plays and his speeches and sort of learn all of his policies. And that's something I wouldn't have ever had the opportunity to do. So it's kind of a mix and match, choose your own adventure.
So cool.
Oh, this is great. I love this insight. I am so incredibly appreciative. I mean, I feel like I could keep on going with questions because I just want to go and feel it out for myself. But I really, I mean, but it really seems like if you hear this message, you're gonna know if this is something that you really resonate with or not, you know, and you can kind of go forward from there, which I think is really our goal of the call. And definitely Alina and I want to come visit.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I will say to all the students, I think for me, the biggest thing in terms of like, is AAU right for you, is I always ask students, like, are you the type of student who when someone said, what do you want to do with your life? In the back of your mind, you always thought travel? Or are you the type of person who maybe you don't quote unquote fit in with mainstream culture, or you do, but you're the type who wants to sort of make it your own spin? If you're more of an individual, if you're more adventurous, if you just want to shake something up and try something that's maybe a little bit scary, if you're that type of person, AAU is for you, 100%. If you're looking to have a really sort of safe, similar vibe to what high school was about, we're not that way. The American accreditation, I think, does confuse people sometimes. We are an American system, we have American accreditation, we do American classes, but we are still based in Europe, period. And so you have to want something different to come here.
Oh,
no, that's a great fundamental message.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Love it.